This is the Kaizen Way, the show dedicated entirely to continuous improvement. Join us every Thursday for new episodes on popular platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and Google Podcasts. This show is proudly sponsored by Modern Kaizen LLC, your one-stop shop for robust training solutions for soft and even most specialized of skills. Find them on the web at modernkaizen.com and all major social media platforms. We thank you for joining us. Now, without further ado, here's your host, Mike Monroe.
What's up, everybody, and good morning. This is Mike Monroe, your host of the Kaizen Way. I'm super excited to be here this week. I've got one heck of a guest for you, and we're going to, as we always do, go down the rabbit hole and talk about continuous improvement. So I'm really excited once again. Let's go ahead and jump right into the show. I'm joined this morning by Hector Naranjo. Hector, good morning to you. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm very good. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. We're going to have a ton of fun, as that is kind of our MO. So, Hector, I know you personally. I know you have a ton of experience, but, talk to the audience a little bit about, who you are, what you do currently, and then, give us something a little unique about you. What really kind of defines your spirit?
Okay. Well, I have been teaching Lean and Six Sigma for almost 15 years in different countries. Something that I love about it is that you can be doing something about continuous improvement. It doesn't matter about the culture, the type of company, or even something that I have been implementing many things in companies where we think that Lean or Six Sigma is not to that type of company. And that is something great about it, because when we approach with the Lean and Six Sigma principles plus one personal way, because something that we need to understand and something that I love is that when we are trying to implement something is to understand the process first. That's something that we need to know, because sometimes we just wanted to follow like a recipe. Let's do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we don't know nothing. We don't know anything about the process, or we don't know what is happening there. So that's why it's something that I always check to understand the process, and also the people, how they feel and everything, because that's also really important in order to have a really good experience on these philosophies.
Definitely. Buy-in is something that we talk a lot about on the show here, because I've noticed a lot of times the buy-in happens to be, a major wall, right? Because change can be really uncomfortable, but, Kaizen is literally defined as change good, right? So that sounds like it's something that's really unique. What about something personal, like something that's outside of your Lean world, or are you solely defined by Lean and Six Sigma? What's something that kind of is something you do outside?
Something that I love to do it, and I always get fun, is to, when I travel, because I love to travel, is to see my environment. Could be a cafe, a mall or whatever, or a place, a park. When we are there, even if I don't like it, I always see the process. Is like I'm getting fun, because when someone is waiting for something and when they give the order incorrectly and they don't know how to handle that, it's like I always thinking I am vacations, have fun, but I am always watching that, and it's like it's kind of funny, because it's like there are many things that you can change, and people don't do it. Maybe they could do their job easily, and that's because they don't know those principles, those basic principles. Yes.
Absolutely. And to kind of hone in on this point specifically, like just recently, we ordered a bunch of food for, the Super Bowl that had just passed.
Oh yes.
And right. And the order was just completely wrong. Like it was missing so many things. Like, I mean, about as wrong as it could be. Right. So of course the restaurant, they they fixed the order and all was well. But I'm the same way. I'm thinking about, while I'm going through the process, thinking about their processes, and do they really understand the process? And if they did, could they have less shrink in more opportunities to churn more food, right? So that's another great example as well, is that, lean and Six Sigma and process improvement, the Kaizen way, isn't something that's specifically tailored to the manufacturing industry. Which I think is really cool. And I've noticed the more time I spend with Kashan, the more I start to really look deep into every single process. Like, it's crazy how it applies to so many different things. So, Hector, I know you said you've been an instructor now for 15 plus years, which is a very long time. I mean, you've seen, especially in the manufacturing space, I mean, you've seen manufacturing change so much through those 15 years. So, talk to me a little bit about your journey. Where did you start and how did you end up where you are now?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, I started working in Mexico, and I was working there in different companies, improving their process with Lean and Six Sigma. At the beginning, we were more focused on Lean because in those years, people were not prepared yet for Six Sigma. Why? Because they were many things obvious to do it. There were so many activities to do it that need to be done before applying, design of experiments, or something more, or hypothesis testing. That is at that time, people told me, why won't do what we should be applying this and that and everything. And I told them, come on, first we need to understand what is a process that is standard, or even 5S's, before start running. So at the beginning, I was more focused on that in Mexico. After that, I have a really good opportunity to move out of Mexico, and I was living in Peru, then Venezuela. Well, that was many years ago. And it was really fun because it doesn't matter the country. At the end, we have the same problems, but the culture, yes, it affects a little bit, but we can apply it there because I was also in Bolivia, Ecuador or Ecuador, or I don't know if the Ecuador or Ecuador, I don't know how to pronounce that. So I had the opportunity to be there. After that, I go back to Mexico. Then I moved to US, and I was working in different companies in US. That's where I met Kishan. And I was really great to be working also there. And I thought, because it was America, that they will have less problem. And what happened? Most of the problems were the same, but just maybe it was more easy to organize because people have a different mindset, and they understand better this and that. But at the end, most of the problems were the same. So it is really great because it's like I was thinking that we can improve something even in our lives to do something better every day. So with that approach, if we apply it at the companies, that's great because every day we can be doing something about it. And something that I love about this journey is to have like a track, indicators or something, to see it, that difference. Because sometimes we think, oh, we are doing that better. Well, how do you know that? It's just because you think, you believe, you are thinking about it. No, you need to have numbers, right? Like to say, oh, I was that before, I was like this, and then I'm like this because of that or something. So that's something that through the years, it's something that I always try to share with people. We don't like to be monitored. It's like when we go to the doctor always tells you need to do exercise, you need to do this and that. And we say, no, come on, no, I don't need it. But after you do it, you're going to see your health levels better, right? It's the same. It's the same. Yes.
Well said. That's a great analogy. Because really people don't like to be monitored, and ultimately at the end of all this, I mean, at the core of everything is the fact that these decisions are driven by data, and it's really important for historical data, because you can't figure out where you're going if you don't know where you've been, right? You need to be able to benchmark that data to be able to have that baseline to see, how these improvements are, improving. And sometimes, there's things go awry. I mean, it's just human nature, and sometimes you don't improve, right? But without that benchmark or that baseline data, you really can't be the wiser. It's really funny to me that you hunker down on the process and you start at the granular level. Like, we really need to understand the process before we can start scratching off a lot of the other things on our wish list. And I've seen this time and time again, even with some of the RFPs that I've seen come out, where it's obvious as you're reading the RFP that they tried to do these things on their own, and they got stuck. And it's likely by reading it that that's really where they got stuck, is that either A, they didn't properly identify the root cause, or they didn't really take the time needed to really understand the process. So that's really interesting. I love that perspective there. Now, on the topic of perspective, it sounds to me like you're a world traveler. Like, you've been all over the world, and a lot of these principles, they seem to really kind of be the same no matter where you go. What countries have you taught in? You said Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia. Where else have you gone? How many countries?
What else? Also, well, those are the country, the ones that you mentioned: Mexico, Colombia, and U.S. Yes.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, there's a lot of the similarities, right? And I'm just curious, with the different countries that you've taught in, what country implemented, or I guess embraced, the culture quickest? And what do you think was the leading cause of why they were able to come up to speed so much faster? Because you had mentioned, like with the USA, that you perceived it as like, oh, this is going to be moving, right? But it's the same problem. So through your history, which one was the quickest, and why do you think that was?
Okay, I have because I have been in, for example, I have been working more in U.S. and Mexico. Let's take example for those countries. Um, I will say that in both in Mexico, I have been in companies and also in US that they move really faster applying this culture. But what I see, or what I why was that? Why that happened? It is because the directors or the owners were committed with these lean philosophies. I will say that that is crucial, that they will understand, they will embrace those changes, because if they are not predicting with example, people will see it. It's like when you say that five S's, keeping the order and everything. Um, and when people see that the director or someone is at the parking and they are smoking and they threw away their cigarette, people see it.
Mm-hmm.
And how will, if you are a director or an owner, and if people see that, do you think that they will clean their area if they see it, that the owner or someone that is above, they are not following something really basic? I think that's the answer. We need to trust and believe that these tools and these philosophies will work thanks to the example. And also, we need to share what we are doing. That's also really important in order to have a really good implementation. Because sometimes we trying to implement something and looks like only some managers and some directors are the ones who are going to be implementing. And no, for this implementation, everyone should be involved. If people don't feel involved on these philosophies, you are going to have a huge failure, because maybe they won't understand why it's important, or how important these philosophies are. Yes.
Well said. And like I was mentioning before, I mean, buy-in is something that I'm seeing as a consistent major barrier or major bridge. in the success or the failure between some of these great projects and their implementation. And it's so important that it really comes down to those details, whether it's the cigarette butt after you just got done telling everybody to implement 5S, right? That's really not a good look. So I mean, you could easily see how people are not going to take you seriously. So I love that. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand that the leadership really needs to buy in, but more importantly, everything really does need to be shared, because ultimately people will understand where their piece in their process is. In the more that those folks can identify their part in the process, it seems easier for them to take ownership of that part of the process there specifically. And without that ownership, you can't have buy-in, right? So that's a really interesting perspective. And I hope, it's something that as our listeners are listening, that they can ultimately, take that and really try to hunker down on the buy-in there. So, Hector, since we're talking about buy-in, and I do really think it's incredibly important, what are some ways that you've seen to help implement that buy-in? Is there anything that you've noticed that's effective with implementing these processes from the buy-in kind of perspective? Like, is there something that you tell executive leadership when you're training with them, like maybe how critical their perspective is? What is there a secret sauce? What do you think?
Okay. Uh, what I always suggest is to work together with human resources, because they are really good. If you work with them, and maybe with a communication plan, how to share things, maybe via WhatsApp, email, maybe some board, um, in some or different boards at the company. That kind of information is better. We don't want to give only one day a lot of information and then forget it. No, we need to
Mm.
have a communication plan. What you're going to be doing week 2, week 6, week 8, or something to the entire year. What you're going to be doing, on how you're going to be sharing different this information, and that information, it depends also about the who is or the people that are working with you, in which I will say classification there are. Could be baby boomers, centennials, millennials. Because if you're millennial, maybe you're going to be needing everything by cell phone or something. But if you're in a different, I will say, age or
Generation?
something, maybe you like more to receive the information in a letter, maybe with a stamp or something. Sometimes we don't put attention on those details, but I always think that those are important, because we're giving or we're sharing the information on the people that they want, and the age that they want, and they will feel more comfortable.
Well said.
Mhm.
Diversifying communication is incredibly important, because you're 1,000% right. I mean, people engage in different ways. And I mean, even removing the generation piece of it, I mean, there may be a boomer that is absolutely, attached to their cell phone, right? And a millennial that's just like, I'm so sick of social media, I want everything in paper, right? But it really comes down to, ultimately how they want to digest that information. And then similarly too, what's really critical is that repetition in the consistency of that information. Like if it's a board in their work area, or an email reminder with metrics of the improvements of that week, that consistent communication that's a really great point on ultimately how to curate buy-in. Because I've noticed, especially in today's world of white noise, right, where it's just constantly everything is calling for your attention. You have push notifications nonstop. The TV's on. At any given point, there's usually 2 or 3 screens in any room, right? And it's just this constant, grab for attention. So, in order to really communicate, you have to compete with that, all of that grasp of attention that's happening from everybody else that's trying to take attention from whoever's a part of the process too. So that's a really good point. I'm a big believer in diversifying the way that we communicate, so thank you for that dearly. Now, we've come to the part of the show that I always like to give our guests an opportunity to talk about something unique, right? Talk about initially what was the outrageous way that continuous improvement initiative was developed or initiated. So Hector, to you, what is the most unique or the most outrageous way that you've ever implemented a continuous improvement project?
Okay, something that I love. I love. I help one student. She wanted to present one DMAIC project, and she was working in one company and something. But she told me, Hector, I want to do something, or how can we relate? For example, my condition, because she was diabetic. She's still, but I want to represent that on data. And I told her, well, that's something that I like it, but I haven't done that. I told her, but let's try to do it. For example, and we start collecting data. She bought, because of her condition, her sugar levels are up and down. That means that she had a lot of variability on the blood sugar. And she bought, there is like a device, I guess the brand is Freestyle or something, when you pinch your arm, and it collects data every 15 minutes. So she had a lot of data on that, about collecting her sugar levels. So the good news is that we had a lot of information about that, and her sugar was up and down. And then we established the inputs. Well, she did it with plus her doctor. Obviously, everything, she was doing everything also plus her doctor. And she put a lot of inputs, like, for example, if she was, the type of food that she was doing, and she had different types of food. And something funny when we were analyzing data, because at the beginning, maybe we didn't establish well the inputs, but something that we start analyzing, I remember on that project, on weekends, her sugar levels were up and down. What do you think that happened on weekends? She was going to the movies. She was, eating with friends and drinking a few wine and everything. And immediately during weekends, it was there. The data doesn't lie, right? So, yeah. so at the beginning, that was the first something that we catch. But the good news is that she realized why about all of the advices that the doctor was giving her. So also we add about the medicine that she was taking, and also we add one other factor about it was the food, and also exercise. Well, she had that. She didn't like it to do the exercise at the beginning, and then because I was helping her with that project for almost 7 months or something, because she was like trying to, we got holidays, let's stop, and then it was like it was not moving the way that we wanted, but at the end I know that was a complex process, because it's something that is not simple, and that's something more difficult. Why? Because it's the human body. At the end, it's not a process, right? It's like, believe me, I'm sure that we didn't get all of the inputs, the right ones, but we got something at the end on the process. She did hypothesis testing, she did an ANOVA and everything, and at the end, one of the factors that affected the sugar levels on her, that is only her case, was the exercise. Doing exercise was was helping her on the sugar levels, and also the healthy sugar. And that's something that she knew, right? Because that was one of the advices of the doctor. But somehow she didn't want it to follow and everything. But after she saw the data and everything and those inputs, she believed in that. And she said, well, the good news is that I know how I need to control my body, how to keep my sugar levels, everything on the right level. And that project, even if we didn't save money, right? Because on that project we didn't save money, but the purpose of the approach was something related on health. And that's something that I love it, because that was something new for me. Because it's at the end, if we collect data, we can be doing or analyzing something about it.
Absolutely. And while you may have not saved money, you definitely saved life, right? And that's
And
just as important,
yes,
if not more important, right? And I love that because, the doctors, well, you're just a doctor. What do you know, right?
yes.
I'm just as guilty, right? But I love that, that's a perfect example that, you can apply these processes even to your day to day. Like I always like to joke that, like, even with my morning routine, I'm looking at, the steps that I'm taking and the stations that I'm visiting around the room as I'm getting ready, right? And then, okay, I went there and back. What I could have gotten both of those things in the first, and trying to operate. I mean, you can really apply these principles and these practices to anything in your life, which is really, really, really cool. So that is definitely a unique story. That's much more on the personal level, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Hector. That was really cool. So it sounds to me like she's kicking butt, or is she having that wine on the weekends? I know my mother-in-law is guilty of that. She does that like every Saturday. Like, why am I spiking? Maybe it's the 2 glasses of white wine you had. I don't know. I mean, in the same breath too, the meaning of life is living, right? So, you have to kind of enjoy yourself too. So it's all about that balance, right? Oh, it cracks me up. Well, on that note, we're coming to the end of the show here, and I always like to give our guests an opportunity to do some sort of a promotion, right? So, Hector, is there anything coming up that's maybe like a public webinar, maybe a book that you got coming out? What do you want to tell the audience about?
Okay, that's something that I love this question, because yes, I started to write my book about how we can apply Lean and Six Sigma, but in our real lives. It's like more in a more general or practical purpose. Okay, so with that type of experience, the one that I just shared with you, um,
Perfect.
I'm I'm sure that we can be applying these kind of things every day. So I will finish that, and as soon as I finish, I will let you know, guys.
Super cool.
That book.
So what I'll plan to do then is that once the book is complete, I'll bring you back on the show. We can kind of talk a little bit more about your book and the journey through the book, and then we'll make sure to drop a link too, so people can get it from Amazon or wherever it is that you want to drop it. So that'll be really
Yes.
fun. I'll make sure to keep you.
And also, I will do it in Spanish and English, because I like at the same time I will put it in both languages, because that most getting used to. When my first language is Spanish, but also I have been working a lot in English, so it is going to be on both languages. Okay, I just
Wonderful.
wanted to let you know that.
Absolutely. And like I said, when the book comes out, I'll definitely bring you back on the show, and we'll get a chance to kind of go into the details of the book. That sounds like a bunch of fun. So Hector, for our audience, what's the best way for our audience to connect with you? Is a LinkedIn message the best way to connect with you? What's the best way to connect?
I do have a LinkedIn, but it's not updated. I do have profile on Facebook, a business profile. You can look for me for Hector Naranjo, and you will find my profile there. Yes.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
And I'll make sure to drop that link too for our listeners that want to connect with Hector on Facebook, after the fact. Hector's amazing. We actually utilize Hector all the time for a lot of the trainings that we do here at Modern Kaizen. And Hector's one of those great instructors that we utilize that always has glowing results from everybody that gets a chance to receive his trainings. It's really wonderful. So on that note, we've come to the end of the show here. Once again, Hector, I cannot thank you enough for joining me this morning. It was a bunch of fun. I really enjoyed your perspective on the variety of ways that we can apply continuous improvement. And I think it's really important, once again, that we look at ourselves and we look at our daily processes, because those can always be improved too, right? The improvement doesn't just happen in the workspace. So again, thank you dearly. thank you everyone for listening to the show. I will see you all next week for our next guest, which will likely be Javier from Machine Tech. It'll be a lot of fun. So I will see you guys next time. Hector, once again, thanks.
Thank you. Bye.